I'm Cassandra Whitlow, 34 years old, and on the morning of my sister's baby shower, I stood in front of my closet for far too long, picking through dresses I'd worn to clients' galas and gallery openings, but none of them seemed right for this. I finally chose a soft blush midi dress, something safe, respectful, not flashy enough to be accused of showing off. I drove the 40 minutes out to Rosewood Gardens, rehearsing polite answers to questions I already knew were coming. I didn't expect to be greeted with champagne or a warm hug from Stephanie, but I also didn't expect what she said into the microphone in front of all her guests. I was still smiling when the room went quiet and someone in the back gasped out loud before I go any further, "Let me know where you're listening from in the comments and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt judged for doing life your own way. My name's Cassandra, but everyone calls me Cassie. I live downtown in a loft that looks out over the river, and I run my own interior design business, Cassie Whitlow Designs. I started it in my late 20s after leaving a corporate job that drained the color out of me. Little by little, I built it from word of mouth and freelance sketches to a company with a client list I'm proud of. I've worked on high-rises, lakefront estates, even a boutique hotel in the Loop, growing up in a small Midwestern town. The values were simple work. Hard, stay kind. Follow the plan. School, college, marriage, kids. My parents were good people, both retired now. Dad was an accountant. Mom taught second grade, and my younger sister, Stephanie. She always did everything right. The honors classes, the medical school scholarships, the wedding to her college sweetheart, and now a baby boy arriving in 2 months on schedule. My parents never said they favored her, but you start to notice when one child's milestones are celebrated and the others are quietly questioned. They never forgot my birthday, but they often asked if I'd thought more seriously about settling down. I stopped bringing dates to holidays years ago. It always ended the same way, with my mother asking about their job security and my father checking their watch. I'd wrapped Stephanie's gift the night before. It was a designer baby carrier, the kind that supports the lower back, and made it onto a parenting blog roundup called 10 Things Every Modern Mom Needs. The thing cost more than my first car payment, but Stephanie had registered at 4 places and made it known she wanted the best, so that's what I brought. The venue was beautiful, classic white stone with a garden terrace and lace curtains over tall windows. Inside were about 30 women, all dressed in baby blues and soft pastels. The decorations were coordinated with surgical precision. No surprise there. Stephanie handled it all herself, even with a full hospital schedule. As my mother kept reminding anyone within earshot, I tried to smile and stay quiet. I found a spot near the mimosa table and kept busy handing out napkins and tidying up plates. Every time I looked over, Stephanie was in the center of things, laughing, posing for photos, opening gifts with perfect reactions. One of her friends brought a set of matching monogrammed bibs, and you'd think they were made of gold. My turn came when she reached for my gift. She read the tag aloud and smiled thinly when she unwrapped it. "Oh," she said, "this is nice. Not the one I picked, but it's fine." I could feel heat rise to my ears, but I kept my smile steady. She set it aside and reached for the next box, like she hadn't just dismissed something I'd spent days researching and hours wrapping. After the gifts came, the toasts her friend Lisa spoke first, then our mom. When they both started crying, I knew I'd be next. Stephanie looked over at me with that expectant tilt of her head. I stood, raised my glass, and said something short but heartfelt about her determination and how lucky baby James was to have her as his mother. People nodded. Someone clapped once or twice. I sat back down, hoping that was the end of it. But Stephanie wasn't done. She took the microphone and smiled wide. "You know what's funny?" she said. "Growing up, everyone thought Cassie would be the first to get married and have kids because she's older, but here I am beating her to the finish line." A few people laughed awkwardly, she went on. "I guess some of us just had different priorities, though, if you wait much longer, Cass. We might need to start looking into fertility treatments." There was a sharp inhale somewhere behind me, and then a silence so full it seemed to hum. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just set my champagne glass down gently on the table and walked toward the garden doors, without looking back. I stepped outside into the garden. Without a word, my shoes crunched softly on the gravel path as I moved toward the far side where a stone bench sat beneath a flowering cherry tree. I lowered myself slowly, still holding the remnants of my composure with both hands, and when I finally let go, the tears came quiet at first, then steady. The spring air was cool against my face. I wiped at my eyes with the side of my finger, careful not to smear my makeup further. I'd spent hours getting ready for this day and still ended up crying in the middle of it. The sound of the glass doors clicking shut behind me had faded completely. I was alone, or so I thought. Are you okay? The voice was soft and high-pitched. I looked up and saw a little girl, maybe 7 years old, copper curls down to her shoulders, and a yellow dress with embroidered butterflies on the pockets. She stood a few feet away, watching me with curious eyes. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I said automatically. "Just needed some air. You don't look fine." She tilted her head. "You look sad." I smiled weakly. "Your dad must be a smart man if he says it helps to talk about it." "He is," she said confidently. "He's a doctor, too, like my Aunt Stephanie." Before I could say more, a man's voice called out from behind the hedges. "Emma, where did you go?" A moment later, a tall man with dark hair stepped into view. He spotted the girl first, then me sitting on the bench. "Emma, you can't run off like that." His voice was firm, but not unkind. "I told you to stay where I could see you." "I wasn't running off. I was exploring," Emma said calmly. "And I found a lady who's sad." He looked at me with concern. "I'm so sorry if she bothered you not at all," I said. "She's been very sweet." He walked over and reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a white handkerchief folded neatly. "Here," he offered it. "Might help a little." I took it with a small nod. "Thank you. I'm Nathan Harper. This is Emma." He said, "We just got here a few minutes ago." "Cassandra Whitlow," I said, "but most people call me Cassie." "Cassie?" His brow lifted slightly. "You're Stephanie's sister." I gave a short nod. "Guilty." "She mentioned you," he said. "Told me you're an interior designer." "She mentioned anything else?" I asked with a tired smile. "Only that you do beautiful work," he replied politely. "I just moved into a house near Lincoln Park that could use some help," Emma chimed in. "Our house is big, but Daddy says it has good bones and bad skin." I laughed for the first time that day. "She's not wrong." Emma's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "Why were you crying?" "Emma," Nathan said gently. "That's personal." "It's okay," I said. "Sometimes people say things that hurt your feelings. Like Lily at school?" Emma nodded. She said, "My drawing was dumb because I made the sun purple. Was the yellow crayon missing?" I asked. "Yeah," she grinned, "but I liked it purple anyway." Nathan chuckled. "You always make new friends, faster than I can keep up with." He looked back toward the building. "We should probably go in and say hello properly. You work with my sister?" I asked. "Yes, I'm the new pediatrician in her practice, just moved from Boston," he added. "Emma and I needed a fresh start." His voice dropped slightly at the last part, but he didn't elaborate, and I didn't press. Emma tugged on my hand. "Come inside with us. There's going to be cake." I hesitated for a moment. I probably should. "You can sit with us," Emma said quickly. "Daddy doesn't like big parties either." Nathan looked a little sheepish. "She's not wrong." I glanced down at the mascara on my fingers. "Let me fix my face first if it helps." Nathan said, "I think you look perfectly fine." He cleared his throat. "I mean, you look fine, as in, you can't tell you were upset." "Thank you," I said. "I know what you meant." Emma gave my hand a squeeze. "There's chocolate cake." I stood up, brushing the wrinkles from my dress, and let her lead the way back inside. The chatter returned as the doors opened. Laughter from the corner where the cake table stood, clinking of forks and glasses. Stephanie was still holding court near the center of the room. She noticed us enter. Her eyes shifted briefly to Nathan, then to me, then to our clasped hands. "Nathan," she called. "You made it." We walked toward her as a group. Emma found Cassie in the garden. Nathan explained. "We were just getting some air." "Was she crying?" Stephanie asked brightly. "No," I said quickly. "Just warm out there." Stephanie nodded slowly. "Well, we saved seats for you both at the main table." Her eyes flicked toward Nathan, then away again. Nathan looked over at me. "Actually, I told Cassie she could sit with us." "If that's all right," Emma chimed in. "She's nice, and she talks to me like a grown-up." Stephanie's smile tightened. Of course we can squeeze in another chair. We made our way to the table as Stephanie turned back to her guests. I noticed a few heads turn our way. Watching with thinly veiled curiosity, Emma leaned close to me and whispered, "Do you like butterflies?" "I do," I whispered back. "Especially monarchs, me too," she said. "We have a book about them at home." Plates of cake began circulating around the table. Emma got chocolate. I went with vanilla. Nathan chose lemon. Emma talked, between bites, about her new school and how her dad only knew how to cook grilled cheese and spaghetti. Nathan winced. "She's not wrong. It's okay," I said. "I burn toast at least once a week." Emma giggled, then reached for her punch and accidentally knocked the cup over. A splash of red liquid landed directly on Stephanie's pale blue dress. "Oh no," Emma gasped. "I'm sorry." Stephanie froze, then stood up quickly. "This is designer." I grabbed napkins and started blotting the fabric. "Cold water will help." "Don't rub it in," Stephanie glared. "I'll go change," I nodded. "I'll handle this here." Emma looked worried, but I squeezed her hand. "Accidents happen." Nathan leaned over. "You handled that really well." "Years of dealing with panicked clients," I said. Emma whispered. "What happened to the couch with the puppy?" "Long story." I smiled, but both survived. Stephanie returned in a new dress. Moments later, the party resumed, but something between us had shifted. I could feel it in the way she glanced at our table now and then. Just a second too long, as the afternoon wore on and the gift opening resumed, Nathan presented a wooden music box. This belonged to Emma when she was a baby. He said it helped her sleep. Even Stephanie looked genuinely touched for once, as guests began to leave. Nathan came to say goodbye. "We have early morning routines," he said, "but it was nice meeting you." "Thanks for the rescue," I said. "Can I call you about the house?" he asked professionally. Before I could answer, Stephanie appeared beside him. "Nathan, do you have a minute before you go?" She was already steering him toward the door. I turned to clean up plates when Emma walked up. "Again, Daddy likes you," she said. "He gets chatty when he likes someone." I smiled. "Is that so he wrote your name on his hand?" she whispered, so he wouldn't forget before I could respond. She was already skipping back toward the exit. I watched them leave as a quiet thought took shape. Something had changed, but it wasn't over yet. The last guests were lingering by the buffet table when my mother handed me a stack of plastic containers to help with leftovers. I took them without question, slipping into that quiet role I'd grown too used to, playing the one who cleans up while others get the spotlight. Stephanie was in the front driveway with David loading gifts into the trunk of their SUV. I stayed behind in the venue's small kitchen, wrapping sandwiches and organizing cupcakes into tins when I turned to reach for the foil. She was there in the doorway, arms crossed, her voice low but sharp. What exactly was that about? I didn't turn. What was what? About you know what I mean, Cassie. I set down the plate and faced her. We talked. Stephanie, Nathan, and I had a conversation. He was kind. "I appreciated that he's my colleague," she snapped. "He just lost his wife last year. He doesn't need anyone complicating his life right now, especially not at my baby shower." I kept my voice even. "He found me crying in the garden because of what you said about my fertility in front of a room full of people. Remember?" Her mouth opened, then shut again. "It was a joke, Cassie. Don't be so sensitive." I folded a napkin carefully. "It wasn't funny, Stephanie." "Not to me and not to anyone who was watching." She stepped farther into the kitchen. "You act like you're above it all with your fancy business and downtown apartment. Some of us wanted a family and a normal life, and you think I didn't," I asked quietly. "That I chose this on purpose. Do you think I enjoy sitting through family dinners while people ask if I've thought about freezing my eggs?" Her tone rose. "You broke up with Brian when he wanted to marry you. You work 60 hours a week and date like it's a chore. Maybe you don't want a family as much as you think." Brian gave me an ultimatum, I said. He wanted someone who'd put his career first and fall in line. I wasn't that person, and I'm not sorry I left. We stood face to face, years of silence rising like steam in a closed room. "At least he wanted to marry you," she said. "You don't even try, Cassie. No one's going to wait forever while you chase client deadlines and furniture orders." My voice was flat. "I don't want someone who's settling. I want someone who sees me and still wants to build something real, not someone who wants to fix me a throat. Cleared at the doorway, both of us turned. Our mother stood there holding a tray of wrapped quiche, her expression tight with concern. "Girls, people can hear you in the main room. What on earth is going on?" Stephanie's hand went instinctively to her belly, her eyes suddenly glossy. "Cassie's yelling at me at my baby shower. The stress isn't good for the baby." I stepped back. "You mocked me in front of everyone, and now you're playing victim." Mom moved to Stephanie's side without hesitation. "Your sister's pregnant. Cassandra, whatever this is, it can wait." "Of course," I said. "Her feelings first, as always. Her path is always the right one, isn't it?" Mom shook her head. "That's not fair, isn't it?" I asked. "When was the last time either of you asked me about my work without changing the subject, or looked proud when I said I'd been published in a magazine or signed a big client?" They didn't answer. I kept going. "When was the last time you told Aunt Margaret to stop asking why I'm still single or defended my choices at Thanksgiving?" Mom's voice softened. "We are proud of you, Cassie. We always have been, no," I said. "You've been worried, not proud. Worried that I'm off script, that I'll be alone, that I'll miss my chance." Stephanie spoke again. "Because we care, Cassie. You're alone in that big apartment with no one to come home to, no one to share things with." "I'm not alone," I said. "I have friends. I have a career. I've built something from the ground up, and I like the life I've created." "Then why do you always sound so defensive about it?" she asked. I let out a breath. "I don't want pity. I want respect." Stephanie crossed her arms. "Respect has to be earned. Cassie." I looked at her, and building a business from scratch doesn't count. Being financially independent doesn't count. What does? Then marrying the first man who asks. Our mother stepped between us. "Enough, both of you. This is ridiculous. Being family doesn't give her the right to humiliate me," I said softly. "And it doesn't give you the right to always take her side." Mom flushed. "I don't always name one time you didn't," I said. The silence was louder than any answer. I picked up my purse from the corner chair. "Congratulations on the baby, Stephanie." She didn't reply. I walked past David in the hall. He looked like he'd heard enough, not saying anything, just nodding slightly as I passed outside. The air was crisp, the sun low. I made it halfway to my car before I heard my name. "Cassie!" I turned. Nathan stood beside a black sedan sweater draped over one arm. Emma waved from the back seat. "Emma left her cardigan," he said, holding it up. "You okay?" I nodded once. "Just family stuff. Nothing new." He hesitated. "We were about to stop for ice cream. Emma's idea. She says it fixes most things." Emma leaned out the window. "Come with us? They have mint chip." I smiled. "I drove, so I'll follow you." He reached for his phone. "Can I text you the address?" I gave him my number and watched as he typed it. Onto his palm, just as Emma had said. We drove to a little shop called Scoops, tucked beside a bakery, with a faded striped awning. Emma led the way to the table by the window, claiming it as the best one. We each ordered a scoop. She got chocolate again. Nathan and I both chose mint chip. Emma ate with the intensity. Only kids have between bites. She asked if I liked butterflies, if I knew any songs about caterpillars, if I'd ever been on an airplane with no roof. Nathan listened with that patient smile that never quite left his face. After a few quiet minutes, he glanced toward me. "Do you want to talk about what happened?" I took a breath. My sister and I have never really understood each other. Her life fits the mold our family expected. Mine doesn't. It's hard when the people closest to you don't see you, he said. "It's not that I don't want what she has," I said. "Just not on someone else's schedule." He nodded. "I understand that. More than you know?" Emma pushed a napkin across the table. "I drew you on it were 3 stick figures, one tall with spiky hair, labeled Daddy, one with curls, labeled me, and a third with long hair, labeled Cassie." I folded the napkin carefully and slipped it into my purse. Outside, the sky had turned a soft shade of blue dusk, settling in like a sigh, and just for a moment everything felt still. The following week was quiet. No calls from Stephanie, no texts from Mom. I kept my phone on silent during client meetings and let the stillness stretch longer than I normally would. I spent more time than usual at the office, reorganizing fabric samples and reviewing layout plans. I didn't mention the shower to my assistant, and she didn't ask on Thursday night just before closing up the studio. My phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. "Hey, it's Nathan Harper," the message read. "I'm ready to tackle the house if you're still up for it." I stared at the screen for a moment before replying, "Absolutely." He texted back an address in Lincoln Park and suggested I stop by on Saturday morning. The house sat on a tree-lined street with wide sidewalks and tidy hedges. Nathan opened the door, holding a mug of coffee and wearing a paint-splattered t-shirt. "Come on in," he said. "Sorry about the mess, we're still figuring out where everything goes." Emma's voice rang out from the kitchen. "Cassie's here. Tell her I found the butterfly book." I followed him into the front room where boxes still sat unopened against the walls. The space had potential high ceilings, a fireplace original to the home, and wide windows that let in generous light. "This place has good bones," I said. "But yeah, bad skin." Nathan grinned, Emma's words, not mine. We walked through the rooms while I took notes. He pointed out things he wanted changed. Outdated fixtures, a cracked tile in the guest bathroom walls that needed color. "What kind of style are you thinking?" I asked. "Whatever makes it feel like home," he said. "I want Emma to grow up in a place that feels settled." We ended in the backyard where patches of grass still needed attention, but a few flower beds hinted at promise. Emma joined us holding a hardcover book with illustrations of monarchs and swallowtails. "There's a spot by the fence where we can put the garden," she said. "They like milkweed, right?" "That's right," I said. "Butterflies love it." She looked at her dad. "Can we plant?" "Some." Nathan gave a slow nod. "If Cassie thinks it'll grow back there, we can give it a try." I stayed longer than I expected, sketching layout ideas and listening as Emma talked about school and the neighbor's dog who barked at nothing. Before I left, Nathan walked me to the front door. "Thank you," he said. "Not just for the design advice, it's been nice to be here," I said. "Honestly?" He hesitated, then added, "Emma asks about you a lot. She's taken a real liking to you." I nodded once. Not quite sure what to say. Over the next several weeks, we met regularly at the house, sometimes for design meetings, other times just to paint or go over swatches. Emma always joined us, asking to help or showing off a new drawing. We planted the butterfly garden one Saturday afternoon. She wore tiny gloves and carried a watering can, shaped like a frog. "Do butterflies come right away?" she asked while pressing dirt around the roots. "It takes time," I said. "They have to find the flowers first, then they'll come." Back every year, Nathan crouched beside us like building anything worth having. "Takes a little time." Emma nodded solemnly. "Like spaghetti. It has to boil first." We all laughed one evening after a long client install. I stopped by with takeout. Nathan had put Emma to bed, but she popped her head out of her room in pajamas. "You brought food back to bed, kiddo," he called gently. She giggled and disappeared down the hallway. We ate on the couch surrounded by floor samples and a half-assembled bookshelf. "You've made this place feel like ours already," he said, "and you're not even finished yet. It's starting to feel warm in here," I agreed. "Lived in." He glanced at me for a moment. "It's not just the house, Cassie." I didn't answer, but I didn't look away either. 3 months after the baby shower, Stephanie gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Mom texted me a photo of him wrapped in a blue blanket with a tuft of dark hair and his eyes closed tight. I sent flowers and a gift, but didn't visit. A week later, Nathan brought it up while we were choosing cabinet hardware. "Have you reached out?" I shook my head. He looked down at the sample board. "Families are hard. I get that. But sometimes things shift when a baby comes into the picture." That night, I sat at my kitchen counter holding the hospital photo and finally typed a message. "I'd like to stop by if that's okay." "Just me," Stephanie replied the next morning. "Sure, come by around 3. Her house smelled like lavender and formula. When she opened the door, she looked tired but happy. Baby James curled against her chest. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. "He just ate, so he's sleepy now." I followed her in, setting the wrapped box on the kitchen island. We didn't say much at first. She offered me tea, and we sat in the living room with soft music playing in the background. She shifted James into my arms carefully. "Support his neck." He was warm and impossibly small. His fingers curled into a tiny fist around the edge of my shirt. "He's beautiful," I said quietly. "He is," she answered, eyes on him. "But it's harder than I thought, the no sleep, the constant worry. I thought being a pediatrician would make it easier, but I still panic when he sneezes." I nodded. "No one has it all figured out. Not really." She looked at me suddenly. "I'm sorry, Cassie, about the shower. What I said that day, it wasn't fair. I think I was jealous." I blinked. "Of what? Of your freedom, your business, the way you built something on your own," she said. "I love David and I love this baby, but there are days when I wonder what it's like to just answer to yourself." We sat in the quiet for a long time after that. No accusations, no pretending, just two sisters with less distance between them than before we didn't fix everything that day. But something shifted like the soil in our garden, settling just enough to hold roots. When I got home, I found a picture from Emma taped to my front door. A big butterfly drawn in bright orange with our names under it. Cassie, Daddy, Emma beneath it in crooked handwriting. It said, "Our garden." I put it on the fridge next to a grocery list and a calendar with hand-drawn stars, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like an outsider looking in. A few weeks later, Nathan invited me to Sunday dinner at his house. It wasn't the first time we'd shared a meal, but this one felt different. He asked if I could come early to help Emma bake dessert. She'd picked apple crisp from her library book and was determined to peel every apple herself when I arrived. She was already in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, apron dragging on the floor. She handed me a peeler without saying hello and pointed to the fruit bowl. "These need to be peeled in spirals, not chunks like Daddy does." Nathan leaned against the counter watching with a smile. "I've been demoted to apple disposal." We peeled, sliced, and mixed cinnamon with sugar. Emma insisted on sprinkling the oats herself, then left the dish by the window so the crisp magic could happen while it baked after dinner. We sat in the living room. The fire was going, even though the air had only just started to turn cool. Emma stretched out on the rug, drawing butterflies on folded paper. Nathan cleared his throat. "I've been thinking about something," he said. "You spend a lot of time here, more than at your place lately." I nodded slowly. "I guess I do." "So I wondered," he said carefully, "have you ever thought about moving in officially? I blinked. "Is this you asking?" He smiled, sort of, but I thought maybe Emma should ask too. She has some strong opinions. I turned and found Emma behind the armchair holding a small velvet box in both hands, her face serious. Daddy said, "I could hold it because I found you first," she said. My breath caught. Nathan took the box from her and came around the side of the coffee table. "This wasn't how I planned it," he said. "I had a whole speech about timing and second chances and how you made this house feel like a home before you even unpacked a box." He opened the lid, revealing a vintage-style ring with a deep green stone. "But really, it comes down to this. We love you, Emma and me. We'd like you to be part of our family for real. Will you marry me?" I looked at both of them. Emma's hopeful eyes, Nathan's quiet steadiness, and something inside me just stilled. "Yes," I said softly. "Yes to both of you." Emma squealed and threw her arms around my waist. "I knew it. I told Daddy you'd say yes." Nathan slipped the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly. He leaned forward and kissed my forehead. "Welcome home, Cassie," later. After Emma had gone to bed, we sat on the back porch, wrapped in blankets with mugs of tea. The butterfly garden was just beginning to fade for the season, but a few blooms still held on in the porch light. "This doesn't feel like what I pictured years ago," I said quietly. Nathan looked at me. "Better or worse?" "Better," I answered, more honest. He nodded. Emma asked, "If this means we can get a dog now?" I laughed. "Maybe after the wedding." We started planning the next morning. Nothing grand, just a small ceremony in the fall with close friends and family. Emma wanted to release butterflies instead of tossing petals. She was already designing the invitations in crayon. A few days later, I stopped by my parents' house to share the news. They were both home. Mom in the kitchen, folding towels. Dad reading in his chair. "I have something to tell you," I said, and sat down. Between them, I held out my left hand. They stared at the ring for a long second before Mom reached out to take it gently between her fingers. "He proposed?" she asked. I nodded. I said, "Yes. Does Stephanie know?" "Not yet. We haven't told anyone else." Mom was quiet for a moment. "And you're happy?" I was happy before. I said, "This is just..." A different kind of happy. Dad put down his book. "What's he like?" "He's thoughtful, steady. Emma adores him and he respects me, not just what I do, but who I am." Mom looked at me carefully. "I think we owe you an apology. Cassie, for pushing our idea of happiness onto you for so long, I didn't speak, just waited. We wanted what we had for you," she said, "but we didn't think about whether that's what you wanted too." I nodded once. "Thank you for saying that." We sat together in the quiet of the living room, the hum of the dishwasher, the rustle of the paper in Dad's lap, and something unspoken beginning to settle. The next weekend I visited Stephanie while David took the baby for a walk in the neighborhood. She answered the door holding a burp cloth and balancing a pacifier between her fingers. "You're early," she said, stepping aside. I sat at the kitchen table and slid the velvet box across to her. She opened it, then looked up without a word. He asked. "Last week," I said. "Emma helped." She smiled slowly. "Of course she did. We're keeping it small. September, maybe at the park where we planted the butterfly garden." She leaned her elbows on the table. "That actually sounds kind of perfect." The baby stirred in the bassinet. She rose to check on him, then returned to her seat with a bottle. "You seem different," she said, lighter. Maybe I nodded. "So do you?" We didn't say much more. Just passed the baby between us, while the afternoon light filled the room and something settled quietly between us when I left. She hugged me longer than usual and whispered, "I'm happy for you." Cassie truly. On the way home, I stopped at the hardware store to pick up a new batch of butterfly-friendly plants. Emma wanted to try daisies next. The garden had become our marker of time, a place that showed us how things could grow if given space and care. Nathan met me at the back gate. Emma ran down the porch steps barefoot and beaming. "We saved you a popsicle," she called, "but it's kind of melty," smiled and took her hand. I like it that way. The week before the wedding was a blur of final fittings, menu confirmations, and calls from Emma, who'd taken her flower girl duties very seriously. She asked if butterflies could be trained to land on her shoulder during the ceremony. I told her they might surprise us if we stayed still long enough. Nathan worked nights leading up to the big day, filling in for a colleague at the hospital. He left Post-it notes on the fridge and texted during breaks, always signing with a small butterfly emoji, just for her the night before the ceremony. I stayed at my apartment one last time. I walked through the space, slowly remembering when it had first felt like home and how it had become something else over time, a place I worked and slept, but didn't quite live in anymore. My gown hung by the bedroom door, a simple ivory dress with a fitted waist and flutter sleeves. No train, just soft fabric that moved when I did. That morning I met my parents at the park, where the ceremony would be held. We'd chosen a quiet corner near the butterfly garden, shaded by oak trees and bordered with wildflowers. Mom brought a thermos of coffee and handed me a cup without saying much. She straightened my veil and pressed a hand to my cheek. "You look peaceful," she said. Guests began arriving in small clusters, friends from work, Nathan's co-workers, a few of Emma's classmates and their parents. Stephanie arrived with David and the baby in a stroller. She wore a pale lavender dress and hugged me without hesitation. Emma's been counting down the days. She said she told me this morning she wants to get married in a garden too. The ceremony was short and quiet, just the way we planned. Emma walked ahead of me, scattering petals, one slow step at a time, her curls bouncing with each movement. Nathan waited under the arch. We'd built ourselves with branches and twine and dried eucalyptus tied in bunches. His eyes found mine the moment I turned the corner and stayed there. Our vows were personal short phrases, spoken low, so only we and the closest guests could hear Emma clapped before anyone else when the officiant pronounced us married, then reached for both our hands as we turned to leave the aisle. The reception was held under a canopy strung with warm lights. We served lemonade and finger foods from a table covered in embroidered linens borrowed from Nathan's aunt. Stephanie took a photo of Emma and me by the cake table and sent it to our mom with the caption, "She really said yes later." As the sun lowered, Emma found me sitting near the butterfly garden. She pointed toward a monarch resting on a daisy. "That one's for you," she said. "I told them you were coming." Nathan joined us with 2 slices of cake and a fork balanced between his fingers. We sat together, listening to Emma name every butterfly she could remember from her book as the sky turned pink and guests began to gather their things. My mother walked over and sat beside me, her hands folded neatly in her lap. "Your father and I were talking last night," she said. "Watching you with Emma and Nathan. We see it now. You didn't need saving, you just needed space to find your own rhythm." I nodded slowly. "It took time. But it's mine now. We're proud of you, Cassie," she said. "Not because you're married, not because of today, but because you stayed true to yourself even when we didn't understand it." I looked out at the garden, the blooms moving gently in the breeze. "Thank you." She reached for my hand and gave it a squeeze. "I'm sorry we didn't see it sooner." As guests left one by one and the sun finally dipped behind the trees, I stood with Emma at the edge of the lawn. Her dress wrinkled, her hands sticky from melted frosting. "Can we have pancakes tomorrow?" She asked for breakfast in pajamas. "Absolutely," I said. "That's a wedding rule." Nathan carried her to the car while she hummed softly against his shoulder, her head resting just below his chin. We drove home with the windows cracked and her drawing of the three of us taped to the dashboard, a fresh one with a ring on my hand and a heart above our names. We passed the grocery store, the school, the corner where we first spotted the butterfly garden lot. The neighborhood felt quieter somehow, like it was holding its breath when we pulled into the driveway. Nathan reached across the console and took my hand. "We're home," he said. I looked at the house, the porch light glowing, the garden just beyond the fence, the windows lit from inside. We really are. Fall settled in with slow mornings and earlier evenings. Emma's school had a harvest festival, and she asked if we could decorate our front porch with pumpkins and handmade paper bats. Nathan brought home a bundle of hay bales, and we spent the weekend arranging everything just right. Emma insisted on carving 3 jack-o'-lanterns, one for each of us on Sunday afternoon. We drove to Stephanie's for a family dinner. It had been a while since everyone was under one roof. My parents were already there when we arrived, my mom holding baby James, who was now crawling and full of energy. Stephanie opened the door with a surprised smile. "You're early." Emma wanted to show James her pumpkin pictures, I said. Emma darted past us and went straight for the living room where she knelt beside James holding up her drawings. We helped set the table while David grilled outside. Mom handed me a bowl of mashed sweet potatoes and said softly, "Your father's been bragging about your design firm to anyone who'll listen." I looked over at him and he gave me a small wave from the kitchen doorway. Dinner was loud in the best kind of way. Dishes passed back and forth, stories told over clinking glasses, and Stephanie teasing David about overcooking the chicken after dessert. "My dad stood to make a short toast to family," he said. "However, it grows and however it finds its way together." Stephanie reached for her glass, then paused, her eyes flicking toward mine. "We have something to share too," she said. "We're expecting again, due in the spring." There was a chorus of congratulations. Emma clapped and leaned into Nathan's side. "More cousins." Stephanie turned to me. "I was going to call you this week, but I wanted to tell you in person. First." I smiled. "You picked the perfect moment later while Emma and James played in the den. I helped Stephanie pack up leftovers." She handed me a container and then paused. "I meant what I said at the shower. Cassie, I was jealous of how you live so fully without permission." I glanced over. It didn't always feel like freedom. "I know," she said. "But watching you now, it's clear you built something solid." We stood quietly for a moment. Then she added, "You're good with James. You'd be a good mom someday, too." I didn't answer right away. Just placed the last lid on the stack of containers and nodded. "Thanks." The ride home was quiet. Emma fell asleep in the back seat. Her head tilted toward the window. When we pulled into the driveway, Nathan carried her inside, and I stayed back to gather the leftovers and her school bag as I stepped onto the porch. He met me at the door and said, "You handled tonight with grace." "It didn't feel like something I had to handle," I said. "It just felt like family." The next morning, Emma woke early and climbed into bed between us. She held out a drawing she'd made sometime before sunrise. 3 stick figures, one smaller one in the middle with butterfly wings. "That's me," she said, "and that's you too, and those are the butterflies watching from the sky." Nathan kissed the top of her head. "It's perfect." A few days later, I stopped by my studio to finalize a new client contract. I noticed the fall sun casting long shadows through the tall windows and made a mental note to swap out the window coverings before winter. Laura. My assistant greeted me with a cup of coffee and a list of upcoming deadlines. You've got a meeting with the Stokes family next week, and the Danvers job is coming in under budget. I looked. Around at the shelves filled with fabric samples and tile books, the framed magazine covers on the wall, the nameplate by the door with Cassie Whitlow designs etched in gold. For the first time in a while, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything to anyone when I got home that evening. Emma was sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, cutting construction paper into butterfly shapes. Nathan was in the kitchen stirring pasta. She looked up. "Can we make more space in the garden this spring? Maybe for a bench? I think that's a great idea," I said. "We'll need something sturdy so we can sit and wait for them to come back," she said. Like before. Outside, the last of the blooms were beginning to brown and curl, but one monarch still fluttered from petal to petal. Emma tapped the window and whispered that one's late, but brave. I sat down beside her and watched it land for just a moment, then lift into the air again, wings catching the last light of the day. They always find their way. "Back," I said, "even if it takes them a little longer. Spring brought new life to our little world." Emma's bench took shape beneath the flowering dogwood sturdy enough for all three of us. We spent weekends digging up old roots, making space for fresh blooms, and planting milkweed along the fence line. She asked if the butterflies from last year would remember us. I told her the garden would welcome whoever needed it. Stephanie's second baby arrived in late April, a little girl named Rose. We visited her at the hospital. Nathan held the newborn, while Emma quietly offered her favorite stuffed rabbit as a welcome gift. My mother snapped a photo of all of us together, something in her eyes softer than before. Back at home, I watched Nathan and Emma in the yard. She twirled in her yellow dress, laughing as he lifted her high above the new flowers. The house was full most nights. Friends dropping by for supper, family showing up with pie and stories. Our table stretched to fit them all, sometimes I thought. About how differently things could have turned out if I'd let bitterness take root or kept waiting for someone else's approval to feel whole. Standing at the window one evening, I saw Emma pause by the butterfly garden and wave at the empty sky, as if welcoming back an old friend. My parents visited more often now, bringing jars of homemade jam and leaving notes on the fridge. Mom would sometimes linger in the kitchen, washing dishes. She no longer rushed to fill the silence. Instead, we stood together and watched the sun dip below the fence line, content to let things be. The past had not vanished or become perfect, but the ache of old hurts faded with time. What remained was the quiet understanding that family can be built chosen or found at the moments we least expect it. I sat on the new bench with Emma one Sunday afternoon, Nathan working beside us in the garden. She leaned against my shoulder and asked if butterflies ever got lost. I told her sometimes they did, but somehow they always found their way home as dusk settled in. I thought about all the ways my life had changed, not on anyone else's timeline, but on my own, each twist and turn, a lesson in patience and in trusting that dignity comes from staying true to yourself. If you're listening tonight and carrying the weight of someone's expectations, I hope you remember that happiness and belonging are not prizes handed out for doing life the right way. They're grown over seasons through kindness, resilience, and the quiet courage to begin again. Thank you for sharing this journey with me. If my story resonated with you or helped you feel a little less alone, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments or for you to join me again next time.